rtvora continues to publish violations for the tech vehicle technical check concessionaire. The Minister of Infrastructure and Energy, Belinda Baluku, has extended deadlines and even amended some points that were prescribed as non-negotiable. The publication of a report by the OSCE ODIHR containing more than 20 criticisms on the conduct of June 30 election process is considered similar to that of a criminal report by opposition leader Lulzim Basha. 3 years after the sanctification of Mother Teresa, those who chose to commemorate her were only the Catholic believers today, with politicians choosing only to take to social media being criticised. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 5th of September 2019. Good evening and thank you for tuning in to rtvора's English edition. My name is Alexandra, bringing you the only daily update of the local Albanian news translated into English. Making headlines tonight, the abuses with the SGS concession contract seem to have no bounds. Beyond extending the deadline, Minister Belinda Baluku has amended some points in the contract that were previously marked as non-negotiable. One of the most flagrant of these is the obligation to reinvest. The contract made in year 2009 depicts a non-negotiable condition that the concessionaire must make a reinvestment of 172 million lek before the final 3-year period of the term in order to ensure standards are maintained. Okay. Moving on. The final OSCE ODIHR report listed more than 20 criticisms of the June 30 electoral process, while indicating that the vote was conducted without regard to the interests of the electorates. According to the report, the polarised political climate and the boycott by the main opposition parties deprived voters of their choice. The publication of the conclusions was anxiously performed at the offices of the opposition parties. The Democratic Party leader, Lulzim Basha, says the OSCE ODIHR report is proof that the prosecution must start investigations into the electoral proceedings. In a media statement from the Democratic Party headquarters, the DP leader said the election report resembled that of a report on a criminal event. The OSCE ODIHR report has overthrown any suspicion as to whether or not June 30 was a farce in every aspect. The report shows that June 30 was the most problematic and dishonest electoral process in the last 2 decades. For the first time in the history of political pluralism, we have a report that speaks not merely of technical irregularities or violations, but of genuine crimes and deliberate illegal acts against the entire electoral structure in the country and the intentional destruction of the right of the people to choose. Practically, this is a document that more closely resembles the report of a criminal event than an electoral process. This is a report that actually contains evidence and facts to initiate criminal investigations against a number of persons and institutions, said DP leader Lulzim Basha. According to him, the June 30 elections were unconstitutional and in violation of President Mehta's decrees. He said that June 30 proved that there can be no free and fair elections with Rama at the helm. Once again, it has been confirmed what the Democratic Party has strongly said all along. With Edi Rama, there can be no free and fair elections. Edi Rama is an enemy of elections, pluralism and democracy, and June 30 showed this as truth. Furthermore, with this current CEC, there can be no free and fair elections. DP leader Lulzim Basha said the country needs deep electoral reform and deep political reform, adding that these are the immediate priority of the opposition. This private and criminal state must collapse to restore the rule of law, democracy and economic development. I've said many times that evil has penetrated so deeply and destroyed so much that Albania needs not only to remove Edi Rama as soon as possible, but also for a more radical change that will eradicate the profound consequences of this criminal regime, as well as any other problems with democracy, the economy and general governance that have been created over the past 30 years. Albania needs to embrace the values of pluralism, democracy, law and freedom. This requires a deep electoral reform and deep political reform. These are our immediate priorities, concluded Basha. Meanwhile, the Socialist Movement for Integration Chair, Monika Kruamadhi, said that this report is an alarm bell for the system in our country. Never before in the history of the Albanian transition has a report such as this that does not only recognise the elections, but also the right for presidential decrees to be observed, been published. This report is important for everyone to take into account in order to enable Albanians the opportunity to integrate into the EU as soon as possible. The opening of negotiations is one of the main obligations of Albania. What I mean is that the OSCE ODIHR report is an alarm bell for the political class that we must give Albanians the opportunity to face the truth and to open the way to the EU. There is only one way out of the crisis, and that is free and fair elections, said Kuramadi. But according to Prime Minister Edi Rama, the opposition statements are viewed as attempts to brew a storm over the OSCE ODIHR report. The OSCE ODIHR report has been published at a time when the political crisis in our country is considered to be at its deepest. Meanwhile, the International Observatory Mission also expressed concern that the recommendations given in 2017 were not addressed, especially those for depoliticising the administration of elections. If Mother Teresa were here, she would criticise us for the lack of stability and the situation the country is in. She would have a lot of criticism for the politicians, said Archbishop George Frendo. He also criticised the politicians for acknowledging the 3rd anniversary of Mother Teresa's Sanctification Day only by sharing posts on social media. The venues, which in previous years have been abuzz with remembrance, were virtually empty, with only a small number of Catholic believers present to pay their respect. In Shkodra, the believers organised a prayer procession in the streets of the city up to the bust of the Albanian saint. Born as Gonje Boyaji, but known worldwide as Mother Teresa, she was declared a saint by Pope Francis on September 4, 2016. The Council of Ministers has given further financial support to the establishment of the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecution and the National Bureau of Investigation. On the proposal of the Minister of Finance, the government decided at its meeting on September 4 to provide an additional 100 million lek in funding towards the Interior Ministry budget, which will be used by This amount will be used by these officers where the SPAC National Staff and the National Bureau of Investigation will work. Another fund of 150 million lek was provided by the government on August 2 for the SPAC structure. According to the decision on the proposal of the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Finance and Economy, the Council of Ministers has decided to allocate an initial budget of 150 million lek for 2019 to cover the special structure against corruption and organised crime. The government earlier adopted a regulation setting out security measures for the protection of judges and prosecutors investigating senior officials and organised crime, including the protection of their families. The Special Anti-Corruption Prosecution is expected to begin work in September with 10 prosecutors. The Police Academy has announced the written test results of more than 2,000 candidates who participated for the 500 admission places in the School for General Patrol. From the results made public, only 180 applicants have actually managed to achieve the required 70 points out of the possible 100. Some senior officials have expressed concern regarding the methodology applied to admissions process for police cadets. Arben Haidarmatai says that in addition to necessary changes in the structure of the content of the examination, there is also a need to reform the admissions process as a whole in order to create more opportunities to allow the entrance of the right candidates into the police academy. About 30% of questions on the examination require knowledge of literature, mathematics, biology and history, but the former police chief says this is an unnecessary burden for candidates. Candidates who do successfully pass the first phase of the application process will then progress to undergoing physical and psychological tests in order to become part of the group that will ultimately be admitted to the Security Academy to become part of the General Patrol. And that's the news across the country today. Thank you for watching our English edition this evening, and be sure to join us again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of rtvora, thank you and good night.